All right, welcome to Equal Time Soccer. We are here with none other than Arianna Sanchez. Of course, for the rest of the show, she's gonna be known as Ches. That's what she's known at. If you go to a Tomcats game down at St. Thomas, it's what you know if you're talking to anyone associated with the St. Thomas soccer program. So Ches, thank you for being here all the way from Colorado still.
Yes, thank you for having me. Yes, I'm still up here in Colorado. It's been great being home and getting to play with my friends up here, but I'm excited to finally come back to Minnesota. I think I have like 10 days and then I'll finally be
Okay.
back. I'm like counting it down.
And it is appropriate that you keep using the phrase up here because you are at whatever, like 6,000 feet elevation. You are from Castle Rock, Colorado, which you told me before we started the show is, somewhere between Colorado Springs and Denver. So in that sort of cool area where you can sort of get to anything you want to do, I'm sure.
Mhm.
So you're from out there, beautiful, mountainous elevation, Colorado. How did St. Thomas even get on your radar? Like, what was the first point of contact? Was it coaches reaching out to you? Was it you doing a scan? What was the way that St. Thomas got on your radar in the first place?
Yeah, so for me, Sheila first saw me I was at a DA showcase down in
Mm-hmm.
Florida and I was just out there playing and I don't even remember which game it was, but I just remember right after I got an email from Sheila and one thing that already I could see that she was such an amazing coach was just like she sent me a whole paragraph of like you could tell she'd watched and taken notes and just been like, I love this about your
Right.
play and this about your play. So I was like, right away I could tell that like this coach knew what she was talking about and she cared about getting players on her team. So I first met her at that showcase and then I ended up coming after talking with her because it was like around COVID, so there was a bunch of like
Okay.
Zoom calls and that kind of stuff. So we had a couple
Right.
Zoom calls and then I was like, okay, I have to come down there. Like I've never been to the Twin Cities and I want to see what it's like. And I came to a camp and oh my gosh, just all the people I met in the first like 10 minutes being there. And I got to meet a lot of the girls already committed. And I could tell like this was just such a great group of girls. And the way she was so big on team chemistry and that kind of stuff, it
Mm-hmm.
was just so like amazing to see it play out like in front of me at a camp. So I was
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, this is the place for me. And it's just gotten better since then, getting to get close with all the girls and with
Mm-hmm.
my roommates. It's been so fun.
Man, I feel like Chaz, I feel like I need to put sunglasses on. You are like pure bright sunshine. You are like radiating energy right now. You're just like all positivity. I love it. And
Oh,
so
thank
when
you.
you hear from St. Thomas, obviously getting that sort of message where they're talking about your game and they're getting in depth is sort of like a cool, like flattering moment. They're interested in me. It's this cool moment. But for
Mhm.
you, if you're the level of player that's playing in, a kind of DA showcase or a new D1 team is reaching out to you, I'm sure other programs were sort of either on your radar before that or reaching out to you. What was like the mix of types of programs you were considering back then? Because I think by the time we cover players, they're in college and they've gone through this entire insane process of like crazy club dynamics, crazy high school dynamics, crazy recruitment dynamics, and we see you at the start of this like very defined period. But the
Mhm.
truth is, you've been through like all of this stuff before you're even on my radar, at least. So when you were getting recruited, were what were the sort of places you were considering? Even like I'm sure some back home or maybe some wherever. What were some of the things you were looking for in a school, and what were some of those other sort of kind of options?
Yeah, so for me, it was funny. I actually was not looking at any Colorado schools because I was so like, oh, I don't want to be home. Like, I want to go somewhere else and see something else. And now, of course, I'm like, I miss Colorado. But no, I was like, for school, I really wanted to try to get out and go to a new place
Mm-hmm.
and just live somewhere completely different. So,
Yeah.
I was talking to schools pretty much like all over the country because I was just like, I don't even know what any of
Okay.
these places are like. So, why not try it? So, I'm originally from Texas, and
Okay.
so I was looking at schools kind of down there and in the South. I was looking at the East Coast because I've never
Mm-hmm.
been out there, so I was like, it's probably fun, whatever. So, and I was talking to a couple of schools in the Midwest as well. But I mean, when
Mm-hmm.
you hear a school from Minnesota is talking to you, and all you want to do is go somewhere new and try something different, you're like, this is perfect.
what's what's more new and different for someone from Texas than going to Minnesota?
No, exactly. I've just been working my way up in the States. So I was like, okay, Minnesota's like about as far as I can get. So I'll try
Well, and
that one.
you mentioned even like in the visit and meeting some of the, the players on the team, and you came in at a really unique time. You're part of this program's first Division I recruiting class, which was first of all, I've said it before, but like we'll just always repeat it, a gigantic class, like a huge
Yeah.
class of incoming freshmen. There were some of those veteran carryovers who either were purely recruited as D3 players or came in during the D3 era knowing it would change to D1, but you all are that first D1 group.
Mm-hmm.
How much did that sort of factor in, of other than you seem like a really sort of adventurous person and a curious person wanting to see different places, how much did it being its program becoming a D1 school, how much did that factor into it? Was it exciting but then also sort of weird, like I have no idea what the hell this is, like no one's ever done this before, like no one had ever gone D3 to D1? So
Yeah.
what was that mixture of sort of curiosity but also sort of like pure wild card for you?
No, yeah. I mean, a part of me definitely was curious being able to see the entire process and seeing what changes would come in the school like during that time. But it was also, it meant a lot to me to like be part of that transition too, and be able to be part of that huge class and see the shift from D3 to D1 and be a part of it and be that first class who's like, okay, we're the first ones recruited for this. Like, this is what we came here for. And it was just so cool to see she like kind of put the pieces together from the team she had before, and the all of us coming in our freshman year.
Mm-hmm.
I really wanted to be able to see that and be a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I was curious, but also just like experiencing it instead of just seeing it and reading about it. It was something I really wanted to try, and I'm glad I did, because it's been
Mm-hmm.
super cool just seeing how the school has shifted and changed as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I think one thing that I you notice once you start covering the college game is just these athletic departments sort of in general are their own sort of if a team sort of gets described as this family, then an athletic department is almost like this extended family where athletes sort of support each other. If people go to a St. Thomas game, you will, a women's soccer game there, you will for sure see random kids with, a baseball backpack on or a football sweatshirt on or a volleyball tank top on or whatever. Like there's always sort of cross departmental stuff. Did it feel like, was there sort of that broader camaraderie of like, this is weird, this has never happened before, all of us are like learning the Summit League together? Like, was there sort of that broader athletic department camaraderie with St. Thomas?
I would say so, especially because, like, I mean, we had all the people in our class over all of the sports who were coming in, and everyone kind of had this weird shift where we were like, okay, we're all going D3 to D1, so we all kind of need to figure out what's going on. And I think our athletics department has been super good about like having us all come together and do these kinds of events and stuff where we can, like, it's not just us like randomly being like, hey, like, what's going on? Like, we're able to really come together, like, and really feel like we're going through it all together. And I think that's also helped just with like, around the school, it's really helped build a really good, like you said, family within the athletics department with everyone. And yeah, it's just like everyone's kind of been going through it together. And it's just been nice to have like, random girls on the volleyball team or guys on like the football team that you're going through it with as well.
I mean, there's only so much you would ever be able to say publicly about this, because I'm sure it's sort of a funny dynamic, but like, what's the dynamic been like with the players who come in as like D1 recruits, and then there's this carryover of kids who were literally like, high level good D3 players, but they were D3 players, and we've seen plenty of those players contribute, the Alex Belfords of the world, Olivia Groutland of the world. Like, plenty of these players can play. Like, it's not that they can't play. But what's that dynamic been like balancing in the locker room of like, okay, some of us got here recruited on scholarship. Some of us were here when they were in the MIAC. You never even had to care about what the MIAC is. Like, you're not from Minnesota. It's like, I don't know what the MIAC is. I never have to learn it.
Yeah.
But what's it been like, that balancing that dynamic of just, it is a unique thing about being part of this team. Like, it's literally, the only team in NCAA history that has this exact mix.
I mean, I think for me, like, it's funny. I feel like I forget sometimes that like these older players did go through that like shift from D3 to D1. Cause I don't know, like the second we get in the locker room or on the field together, like you would think that we would have been together the last like 15 years just playing club.
Right.
Like, so I feel like there's not really much of a like weird dynamic for it, because I mean, I've played like Jasmine Gates, who also plays my position. Like, I've seen her more as just like a role model, because she's literally like, she's already older than me, and just being able to see her, like, I see her more as like someone I can look up to and who can teach me, because either way, they were on the team. They've been with Sheila. They've been at the school. They understand that kind of stuff that goes on as well. So, I mean, even if some of us were recruited for D1 or D3, I think a lot of us are just like, we're all here to play D1 together. So, it's like the past, it almost doesn't matter as much, because it's like we're all going through those practices together. Yeah. We're all figuring it out together no matter what. Because either way, I was still a freshman, and like these people were like way older. So
that's true. I
didn't know what was going on.
I didn't think about that. That is sort of a luxury you had, where it's like everything you experience is just now. Like it's like when I talked to freshmen who dealt with that first COVID season that got canceled and pushed to spring, it was kind of like, wow, this is really weird, right? And they're like, yeah, but I've never had a normal college experience. So for me, this is all I know. So it's like if you just start in the D1 era, like you have no idea what they did during D3 or if it was different or the same or whatever. It's like, the culture is vaguely the same because of Sheila. But yeah, and I think one last thing about the Colorado shift, you mentioned that you're originally from Texas. So I'm assuming at least going from Texas to Colorado had to help in your transition from them going from Colorado to Minnesota, right? Because we're other than it just being a little colder and a lot flatter, like what are the big differences you notice in being in Minnesota now almost year round versus your time in Colorado?
Yeah, I think for me, there's a difference in cultures of people, which I think is cool. I mean, obviously, I think everyone is fun in both states. But I don't know, in Minnesota, I feel like people are very big on like just this family aspect. I've noticed that just being at school, and I've also seen it transition into soccer. I mean, I've seen girls like be with their teams for years, and just be able to see like how close they've come as family has been super cool. Just because, especially in youth soccer in Texas was very transient, just like the people always moving teams.
Yeah.
The same thing in Colorado. And I don't know, in Minnesota, it's been really cool to just see how people really like come together and really like grow together throughout their club years. So you see that in college. Like, I mean, I came in from out of state, and it's like I'd been there my entire life. The way people brought me in, that's like one of the coolest things I've seen about being in Minnesota. And it makes me, feel really lucky to be here.
I love that. Well, and it's crazy too, because to someone like me, I grew up in like rural northern Minnesota playing really scrappy club soccer. I mean, I played since I was 5, but when I've been down here meeting players like you who play at that high club level, sort of the really intense, expensive, like crazy club stuff, like the really, really bonkers stuff. It's crazy because to me, the Minnesota club stuff feels so intense and so nuts, like so bonkers. And then to hear you say like, nah, dude, Minnesota is chill. Like Colorado's crazier, Texas is crazier. And so it does help me have some perspective of like, it's only intense to me because I came from such low stakes, like low stakes, like rural northern Minnesota classic 2 club soccer. And you're like, no, it's actually really sweet and gentle here, Matt. Like they're all buds. It's super dope.
I mean, there's like that back and forth, but I don't know, Minnesota's just super cool about like, I don't know, everyone just coming together. And I think it's nice because there's always those crazy club teams and like, big areas like North Texas. I'm like, dang, it probably was nice to grow up somewhere where people were like normal and not doing like crazy stuff on their teams. Like, wow, I kind of I had that.
Where people were normal. I love that. And so let's talk about your game a little bit. You've had, a pretty organic growth in terms of your overall role in playing time with the team. That first year, everything was pretty wild card that first year. I mean, so many new players, new teams that even Sheila had not coached against, like everything was brand new for everyone. And even considering that, you got into a few games, then into your sophomore year, played a ton of games, started, a good chunk of those games. You've also had those spring seasons, which I'm assuming for a new enough team play an even bigger role than for sort of a standard college team. How do you feel now, just in general, sort of going into your 3rd training camp with the club after having those experiences and having those reps under your belt where you really have been growing sort of step by step by step, and now you're coming in, you're like this vet. How do you feel coming into this 3rd camp compared to maybe that first day you stepped on campus?
Yeah, well, I mean, I definitely feel like I know a little bit more what's going on. That's been nice, just being like, oh, okay, so this is like how we're supposed to defend as a team. Like, this is what it's supposed to look like. It's been nice kind of not to have that big, like, learning curve again.
Right.
And I mean, just having the growth that I've had, I think going into this next season, like, it helps to be able to look back on on all my growth and be able to look back on, you know, the mistakes and like failures I had, but also some of the successes, because like failures also help you grow. And I think it's just helped me grow a lot into the player I've become now. And it's exciting to like go into like my upperclassmen era and just be able to not only like kind of be able to help myself through it a little bit more, but also help like those younger players who may have been, who, if they're going through the same thing that I was kind of going through, or just like trying to figure out what is even going on, or like what to eat at the dining hall and that kind of stuff. Like, I'm excited that I'm able to be like that role model, hopefully, for them, and be able to help them like with their transition as well. Just that helps build the team up as a whole, I think.
You're heading into your big sis area. Now you're a big sis. You're a big I love that. And I think I was thinking back, I'm pretty sure I was at the very first day of training of that very first D1 season, because I had messaged Sheila and I said, hey, is it cool if I swing by? I'm not going to post anything, but is it cool if I come watch? And the only reason I really remember it is because I think the very first drill she had, or I guess coaches don't say drills anymore. What do they say? Activity, whatever. The first thing she had you all do was this thing where 2 players are on either side and then 2 players are in the middle. And one player is just like on the other one's back, like really physical, like push defending. And you have to like, you as the attacker have to like hold a defender on your back and like broad base, strong base. And you're just physically like battling like this super gritty physical drill. And I remember it was like 5 minutes into the D1 era of the team. And I was like, oh, okay, this is helpful. I know exactly the kind of coach Sheila is. Okay, this is good.
No, like, love it. I feel like I remember that. Yeah, funny.
I remember being like, oh, drill 1. Okay.
Number 1. Right. I was probably a freshman.
There we go.
What's going on?
hold a defender on your back. I get it. But did you, when you've played in all these settings, even when you were younger in Texas, and, I don't know if you did a lot of high school, like club stuff in Colorado, whatever, you've played on so many different teams at this point, I'm sure. Has that sort of, gridded out first drill of the day is like holding a human person on your back. Has that style been something you've done before? How much was sort of the style of play something that Sheila talked about during that recruiting process, or something that you knew like, hey, this would fit with my vibe or whatever? How much has that style of play been part of like your transition into the team?
Yeah, well, I know when I was first transitioning to the team, I know that one thing I was like, I probably need to get like stronger and like be able to like, because I mean, I'm playing against girls who are like 21, 22, and I'm like fresh out of high school soccer. Like, so I knew that like getting that strength was going to be big for me, but it's something that I feel like wasn't big whenever I was playing club in high school and on my high school team, because it was just like, you're just playing and it's like, you just want to look at the coaches. And I feel like that was a lot of just like, oh, just pass around and we're going to make you scrimmage a lot and it's going to be super fun. But I like how it kind of in college and with Sheila, I feel like it's been a little bit more of a shift into some of the like intricacies of the game, because you win and lose games and like some of those small moments of getting to win a ball or finishing on corners and that kind of stuff. I love how like I've been able to transition a little bit more in college soccer in our practices, just to be able to work on that kind of smaller stuff and like being able to hold off a defender. Like, it's something that you may not have been doing, like actively thinking about or training, but it's something that it'll make or break you for playing in college soccer and having that. And that I like how like Sheila is like smart enough to understand that, like getting that done right away. So it's something I definitely didn't expect going into college soccer, but it's something that I was like, okay, yeah, that like makes sense. Like I can see why.
I think you're describing sort of that physical jump from high school to college too. And I think one thing that goes maybe a little under discussed, and we try and talk about it on our shows, is like just the strength and conditioning and weightlifting stuff. I mean, I think you can sort of tell when you watch players, like you can sort of tell which players have been in any of those programs, whether they did it really early as a teenager or whether they become an upperclassman. You can sort of see them fill out their frame a little bit, because otherwise you all are running so much that if there's no lifting, soccer players can be pretty trim. Like soccer players can be really lean and really skinny because you're just burning so much energy out there. And so you really start to see the players who either have to live in the weight room to like build out a little bit? Or like how much has that been part of the journey too, of just like the literal strength and conditioning and performance stuff of, hey, maybe I need to sort of build up this part of my body, maybe I need a
Mhm.
little more, like I know sometimes I hear coaches talk about a player needing like a stronger base, like because they need to, but you're obviously a player who's playing out on the wing, so maybe you need a different type of thing. What kind of role has that played in terms of like lifting and strength and conditioning and stuff?
Yeah, so for me, two things that have gotten really big for me is first, like being able to have that speed and endurance on the wing and be able to make those runs all day long. So, I mean, that's been when I come back home from school, then I have my trainer that I've been training with and posting a bunch on my Instagram story, and everyone's probably like, "Oh my God, like she's posting again." But I've been
No,
training with him.
that's a requirement, Ches. We're in favor. We need the content, so this is
No,
good.
exactly.
We
I'm
need the
like,
content.
"Darn
You
it."
should
Just helping
post
out.
those workouts. Post those
Yeah.
workouts.
And I mean, it's been nice coming home because whenever I train with him, it's like we're doing like yo-yos and that kind of stuff just to keep up that endurance. And we start our practices with that. So it's like being
Mm-hmm.
able to build up that endurance and be able to be tired and have your legs tired, but also like you need to be able to get a ball, run it down and cross it. I feel like that
Right.
endurance has always been kind of big for me.
Mm-hmm.
But also just like getting big. I have my trainers at school, obviously, and then definitely when I'm back home over the summer, it's like, okay, like time to go. Cause it's just hard to have that drop off for lifting and like be able to go into the season and be like, oh gosh, like I'm not strong enough. So I think it's
Right.
gotten even more important for me, just lifting wise,
Mm-hmm.
because if I just ran on the wings all day and didn't pick up a weight, like I mean, I would not be if someone ever came close to me, I'd just fall right over. Like it'd just be a mess. So it's been
Do
nice being
you
able to lift too.
do you have certain goals for that? Like you've
Mhm.
kind of hinted at, and we'll get in more depth. Like for those who have not watched Ches play, like your danger in your game is so much like dynamism on the wing, like your quick burst, your ability on the ball, like all the super obvious fun stuff that people love about a winger is like Chez's game. But do you, with the strengths, and so we'll get into it, don't worry people, but with the strength stuff, do you have like personal goals? Like do you, like there's a player I always bring up who actually coached at South Dakota and used to play at the U, and I
Mhm.
had her on early in COVID, Maddie Gaffney, and I always tell this story because it's just so nuts. She came into the Gopher program weighing 97 pounds, like,
Oh my
and
god.
she gained 30 plus pounds of muscle because like she was starting at 97, which
Yeah.
is like 97 is absurdly like no human beings actually weigh 97 pounds. Like that's
No,
absurd.
yeah.
But do you have goals like that of like, okay, if I'm gonna lift, I want to either like numerical goals of like, okay, I want to gain X pounds of muscle, or do you have goals of like, I want my legs to get bigger, I want my whatever, I want my back to be strong. Do you have like
Mhm.
individual goals you aim for to like keep yourself motivated of like, oh, I want my arms to be like a little more jacked, or I want my how do you even keep yourself motivated for that kind of stuff? Do you have those
Mhm.
milestones?
Yeah, for me, a lot of it, it's like I like to see that transition on the field of how I play and how I'm like
Mm-hmm.
able to fend players off. I always try to make sure that like I'm, able to keep up and able to push people off. So that's the number one like indicator for me. I always want to make sure my arms look good. So I'll always do an arms day just so I'm like, okay, my arms look like big enough. Um, and then I don't know, like I don't think as much for like numbers and like a
Right.
certain weight I want to get to. I just think like I want to make sure that I'm growing and able to see like I
Right.
guess growth like numerical growth in that sense, like, oh, I'm lifting more,
Right.
like I can see it. And also
Mm-hmm.
just like I don't know, I like to be on the field and be able to see like my strength when I'm running and that kind of like my muscle being able to help me make those bursts and
Right.
that kind of stuff. I feel like I can feel it when I'm playing. So I try to just
Right.
keep up with that and try to watch the numbers that I lift to and make sure my arms
Yeah.
look
I mean, listen, got to, oh,
no,
another
honestly.
great, this is another great St. Thomas story. You all were scrimmaging, like the turbo. And I think this was 2 years ago, maybe it was last year.
Mhm.
And, there is this thing where I know being a soccer player, I never really thought about this, but even when I played 1 year of like low D3, the guys on my team, like never wanted to wear shirts because they didn't want tan lines. And that was the
Oh
first time I'd
gosh.
been around like vanity soccer. And so
Mhm.
I know like the whole like aggressive tan line thing is probably like brutal when you want to be like posting pics and stuff. So
Yeah.
there was this player for Viterbo who there's this thing where, you know, when you like pull your jersey up to wipe your face and then your
Uh-huh.
jersey might kind of be up for a second.
Oh, I feel like I
She
remember
so
this.
she did that, but then she also kept the jersey up like on purpose, like
Yeah.
full tummy out, like 80s football, 90s football, kept her tummy
Mhm.
out for like 12 minutes or like 15 minutes. And it
Yes,
was the
I
only
remember.
in a game, and it was the only, and I'm like, I guess it's not like against the rules, but it
Yeah.
was certainly the first time I've ever seen someone just full on, like you see those highlights of like football players in the 80s where the jersey's
Yeah.
like here. It was like
Mhm.
that, but for a soccer player. And I was like, wow, I guess okay. I've
I
never.
remember, yeah. And we were all like, I mean, she's like not wrong, but like I feel like the tan would still be weird. You'd have like a weird like one across your stomach. Like might as well just like pull it down at that point. I mean, maybe
I
she was
just, yeah,
hot, I guess.
I don't regularly talk about tanning on shows too much, but it was so obvious. I'm glad the players noticed too, by the way, because it
Yeah.
was like it was so obvious. Nice. Well, I think so. We did talk. You did talk about endurance and talk about you know, gaining your strength and being able to play tired. I think the
Mhm.
funny thing is being an attacker for St. Thomas also means you play. And we talk about it all the time because it is unmistakable if you watch St. Thomas. If you watch a Sheila McGill game, the crazy short shift subbing for attackers. So
Mhm.
like shifts as short as like 10 or 15 minutes, like quick burst. It's like hockey shift stuff where you're in
Yeah.
and you're out. I have never personally seen it like in a different college system. I think she sort of mentioned UNC and Anson Dorrance is known for a lot of subbing. I don't think
Mhm.
other schools do this quick of subbing. So for you as an, and it's mostly for the forward line and then the attacking midfielders, obviously, because
Mhm.
she's mentioned part of the idea is she wants super high intensity defense, like high work rate defense, go, 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 go.
Yeah.
Um, but it's still, which, you know, obviously there's some benefit to staying fresh. But what I always think about every time I watch these games is it also puts such a gigantic challenge on you as attackers to get in the flow offensively because you have such short time, like such little time. You're in and you did, and then in your head, you're like, well, how do I grow my role? The only way I grow my role is if I'm
Mhm.
productive, and I have to be productive this second because I'm going to get subbed off in 8 minutes. And so for you, you've played a ton of games with her now, you know, both starting and off the bench. And by the way, it's no different for starters or bench players. The shifts are quick, everything is quick.
Mhm.
But for you, how have you adapted to that sort of quick sub system where, especially as you as like a winger, you're going to have the shortest shifts of probably anyone on the team. How have
Mhm.
you adapted to that in terms of your mindset and then just like getting used to it?
Yeah, so I think, I mean, I bet a lot of coaches probably want like their players to come on and immediately like score a goal and just, you know, it's easy 7-0. But I think one really cool thing about like Sheila is that when you're subbed on or when you have your short
Mm-hmm.
shift, she doesn't expect you to go in and like score 3 goals. She expects you to
Right.
make a difference in building and make a difference in changing the
Mm-hmm.
dynamic of the game. Because even if
Mm-hmm.
you're on for 15 minutes, if you're able to bring up the energy and be able to have the entire team as a whole be able to press together, defend together, and really work as a unit, then I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you've made your impact. And those are the kind of changes
Right.
that will lead to goals later in the game. But it's like if she has players coming in, like we all kind of can have our different styles of play. But if we have our players coming and they all bring in such a high level of energy to the team, then next thing you know, it's been like an entire game and you've just had a high energy press from your
Mm-hmm.
attackers and that kind of stuff. So I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
like being able to keep up just that high level of intensity, I think as a whole helps us to work together as a team. Even though like
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's hard to get into the exact flow and be able to start connecting with
Right.
the players on the field right away. If you're able to bring up the energy and have everyone work together as a team, then things will just come together even faster, I feel like. Like
Mm-hmm.
after a couple minutes, it's like, okay, I know what I'm doing. I know these girls. Like I know
Right.
what to do here.
Right. It's well, and you've had time now to sort of settle into, okay, this is what the system is. So here's how I make an impact. When
Mhm.
you first did it, like the first time you play like full sided, or the first time you played a game, it had like, I have to imagine, because first of all, I think the thing that's going unsaid here is any player that's good enough to get recruited to play D1, D2, frankly, even players who get recruited to play D3, almost always are like 90-minute players. So
Mhm.
whether you as an attacking player ever actually played, you know, every game 90 minutes, you're like that level of player where it's like, we're all center attacking mids, we're all the best player on the field, we're all out there a ton. And
Mhm.
so it is like, I have to assume at least at first, it had to be an adjustment, right? Like a
Oh
difference
yeah.
of like, okay, I'm used to like pacing myself for the entire first half or for at least
Yeah.
like 35 minutes. And then now it's like, holy shit, we gotta go. Like I have
Yeah.
to imagine there was some adjustment at first, right?
No, for sure. I mean, it was an adjustment. I mean, at least I was like, okay, I don't need to like run for like 90 minutes now. But now it's like, if I don't have to run for 90 minutes and like also try to conserve your energy too, it's like, if I have a 15, 20-minute shift, like I'm about to go crazy for the next like 20 minutes, like, cause I'm going to have so much energy. So in a way, it also kind of helped, like, even though it's kind of a weird, like mental shift of like, okay, I'm
Mm-hmm.
not going to play like a full 90 minutes now. It's the fact that like
Right.
if I know that every player who comes in like after me or before me, like if I know they're putting in as hard of a level and high of a level as they can, then it's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, like I'll go off as long as like I know that like we're able to keep up that like work level. I think
Right. Right.
I don't know, that kind of shift, just being able to understand it's like also the good of the team to be able to do
Right.
that kind of stuff too. Because it's not just, even though we're all like amazing players coming from like all these amazing teams, like
Right.
we all have to be a team at the end of the day, and we have to do what
Right.
works for the team.
Right. Well, and it's like, well, okay, even if this isn't the exact system I want to play in, it's like this is our system. So like I need to
Yeah.
figure out how to be impactful in the system. Like college, like
Mhm.
women's college soccer, a lot of it is based on the head coach. Like your entire world is based on your head coach. Like your whole life is based on your head coach. So like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like, well, this is the system. So how do I excel in it? How do I make an impact in it? It's like all of you are doing that.
Mhm.
Everyone on every team is doing that same thing. But like you said, if it's going to be short shift, then like the harder I work, then someone comes in, does the same. We all raise the tide, that kind of thing. And
Mhm.
we're going to shift into what at one point was somewhat secret, but I think I'm allowed to talk about the new formation and the new system now because you all have played like multiple spring games. There have been hundreds
Mhm.
of witnesses. I think I am allowed to talk about uh, it, which the joke is I asked Sheila if I could go to one of your early spring games, and she said yes, but you can't talk about the formation. And I was like, okay, now I really got to look out for this formation. It's
No, yeah.
essentially kind of like a 4-2-2-2.
Mhm.
And so I think there's some spacing principles mixed in there. So some freedom for sort of the initial mids to get up, some freedom for those sort of second mids to get wide, and then obviously the front players, all these different principles that we won't get into.
Mhm.
But that formation tweak, I think generally you all had sort of been playing a 4-3-3, right? Like before
Yeah.
then. So you as sort of a standard winger on the top of a 4-3-3. In this
Mhm.
4-2-2, what are some of those changes that were like for you as an attacker? Because I think I talked to Lissa Mizutani, and she's sort of like living as the outside back holding mid type person. And so I got a sense of how her role maybe works. But for you
Mhm.
as sort of a dangerous final third attacker, what changed about your role with the formation tweak?
Yeah, well, one thing I noticed pretty like quickly was that like when you're wide, it's like it feels like you have the entire field to yourself once you get the ball. You're like, oh, I just need to run like over there. This is perfect. But being in the middle has shown me
Mm-hmm.
like, I mean, I'll get the ball and then I look around, there's like 5 players there. I'm like, I need some space. Like, why is there like 50 of y'all here? But so that was a good little shift, being like, okay, now I've like actually got people all around me. And so that kind of also, it gave me a cool shift to be able to like play a little bit more with like those quick touches and being like, you can't just run
Mm-hmm.
out. Like you have to touch around people, you have to play around people. That's been kind of
Mm-hmm.
a shift, but I've also really liked it because it feels like that kind of soccer I did where it's like, back in club where you were doing like moves around cones and that kind of stuff. It was a little bit more of like, that like it feels like you're really playing soccer, like going up against people in these tight spaces compared to being out wide.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that shift was super cool. And something
Mm-hmm.
that me and Sheila also talked about, like at the end of the season, was also just how in these kinds of formation shifts, like I might not be like a wide player still, but
Right.
like it's important as a player to be able to take what you're good at and use it in like multiple different formations, no matter what it is. So I think it was
Mm-hmm.
cool to be able to play in that middle, but also once we were attacking to really burst out and be able to use my speed and get wide and help attack in that sense. Like
Mm-hmm.
super cool to have that like shift in play and just be able to move from the inside all the way out instead of from the outside in and shifting that side to side. It's been cool to just really burst open and like finally have my space and not have 50 players around me all the time. But yeah, that was definitely a cool little like mindset shift for sure once I started playing there.
Well, and so in that stacked sort of 2-2-2 with
Mhm.
the sort of front six attacking players, do you have a feeling of sort of which of those lines you might live in? Because in some sense, I think it's partly sort of that second two whose job maybe, and I think, by the way, I should say, I think the idea is it's sort of unlimited flexibility in the attack, right? So
Yeah.
like that's a starting point. But I think in general, are those sort of second two meant to sort of help occupy that wide? So is it sort of counterintuitive where even though I think of you as a frontline player, do you sometimes get put in that second line because that's the folks who maybe go to the width more, or is everyone supposed to go to the width, so you might play in either of those front two lines? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So I'm mostly playing in that second line just because
Right.
that makes the most sense in the formation for me to help
Mm-hmm.
go out once especially that top player gets it. I'm able to be the
Right.
one who like opens up, and we still have those front two with those now second lines all the way wide. So
Right.
it's mostly those players. But I mean, the nice thing about that formation is that I mean, once you learn how to play and fill people's space, like because if you're
Mm-hmm.
playing and someone's not in the space that like you need someone, like you're able to
Mm-hmm.
move around. So I mean, you could have like the top player go wide, you could have the third defensive center mid go wide. Like you could just, it's
Right.
always that flexibility really keeps everyone thinking. So it's
Right.
important to like, you got to keep thinking in that formation because you can't just do the same mechanical, like those players get wide, those players go up. Like it's always
Right.
being able to shift and move your mindset has really been like, it's been fun to play, have a little creativity.
It is funny too, because you all as a group, like you said, it's not anyone's job to do any one thing. You always have to be reading like what your teammates are doing.
Mhm.
And it is interesting to think about that because there's no one that's immediately coming to mind for me that you all have that sort of like a traditional hold up number 9 forward. Like,
Mhm.
a lot of the players who play in your front line, like Lexi Huber, like Abby Brantner, you, Mariah, like you all of you are kind of like run on players. I mean, like you're off
Mhm.
ball players, you're run on players, you're dangerous in space, you like to be going downhill. There's no one who's jumping to mind, and you can correct me, who's sort of like a true, like, keep a defender on your back, I'm holding up play, and then wingers run off me.
Mhm.
Actually, I mean, among the group I said, I guess Huber would be closest to that, but even she is like a ball at her foot player, like a run on player. So
Mhm.
maybe it's also that this system just lets you all just sort of full havoc offense, like full combination offense type of thing too.
Yeah. I mean, and it's fun because now that we have those two front two, like we also
Mm-hmm.
have a lot of the freshmen coming in who can also play as that player. Like we have Tatum
Yeah.
Treadle coming in, who we're super
Okay.
excited about because she's like insanely strong, as well as Lexi
Give
who's
it.
coming back. So it's like,
Give
especially
us
because we
the
have them. Yeah.
Chaz. Chaz, give us the scout on Tatum. What's the deal? Like
Oh
that.
my
Let's get the hype train going. Tell us about Tatum.
Yes, Tatum is finally, I think she has been playing over the summer with Salvo. I think she's been
Okay.
practicing with.
Okay.
And I think this is going to be her like first season with the team playing in games. We saw her practicing with us over the spring. You could already
Okay.
tell. I mean, I swear, like it's so fun to like watch a player because everyone's always like, "Oh, Chesley, you can run all the time," and I'm like, "You guys need to also like look at Tatum. Like, I swear to God, that girl could just run forever. She has so much energy, like all the time on and off the field. So it's super exciting that like a lot of us forwards are already super like way too much energy already. So it's like being able to drop her in too. And like, I mean, if you have a full line of players who are just running the entire game, like I think
Yeah.
I'm super excited to have Tatum. Like, not only can she run, but I've seen her be like super strong with the ball, with the player on her back and the ball at her feet. And it's
Nice.
always nice to have the center player who's able to, just hold it up, drop it back, and then send us like running into these spaces. And I can definitely see Tatum
Totally.
being that player for us. And I mean, I've already loved just like practicing and doing scrimmages with her. So I cannot wait for her to come in the fall. I can't wait to see her.
Listen, equal time is an all hype zone. There's nothing more that I love than just like hyping the hell out of somebody. So Tatum, you're
Yes.
officially on the hype train. I do think too, like you mentioned, I mean, all of college soccer is like this, but especially the Summit League, like you have to be able to win in more than one way because like
Mhm.
games can really, really grind down to a halt. I mean, like teams like Omaha will just park the bus on you. They will defend the hell out of you. Like,
Yeah.
you are not going to be able to get on the counter because they're never going to go forward. Like, they're only going to send one attacker or two attackers forward. They're going to score on a set piece, and they're going to force you to operate with 9 defenders in the box. I mean, like, they are going to screw you over.
Yeah.
And so you can't rely on just like pacey counterattack players, or like, you or Mariah might not get a single wide open run that whole game. Like, it's just so clogged up. And so you have to have, it's like in every conference, but especially the Summit League, there's just teams that will just park on you, man. Like, Omaha is brutal. Like, if people didn't see us covering when they beat South Dakota State in the opening round of the Summit League tournament, like, they can just break your spirit. They will park and they will sit and they will defend, and you will just get pissed off by minute 6. And like, they just, that's how they want to play. They want to win 1-0. I say all the time, their coach told me verbatim, we like to win games 1-0. Like, they will get you so mad. And it's like, they do it. I mean, they won the Summit League tournament. Like, so
I mean,
joke's on us. Joke's on us. They won.
Yeah.
I'm going to take a quick break. Ches, when you eventually move to Minnesota after you're graduated, you will get the help from Pentz Homes. This show is brought to you by Pentz Homes. Whether you're buying or selling a house, looking to do some projects in your current home, Nate and Lydia can help you find what you need financing for a basement remodel, need to add a second bath or even a workspace now that you're working from home, like I am. Look at this great couch behind me. Pentz Homes and their preferred lender, Angie Shear with Luminant Financing, can help you find the right financing tool. Go to pentzhomes.com, or you can find out more about them on social media at Pentz Homes. They are the absolute best. They were showing some houses on my block this week. Everyone, get ready to rock and roll. All right, Ches, let's jump into some cooler stuff than me nerding out about formations. You attended the Black Student Athlete Summit a few weeks back. This was in LA. So many cool, like, soccer specific leaders out there, like Justin Morrow, Simone Charlie. If folks are sort of nerd level soccer fans like me, they know Justin from, helping lead Black Players for Change. Simone Charlie is a badass, in the NWSL, who started a few years back at that level. Tons of college athletes were there. We talked a little bit before the show started. You're also a part of, and I believe you were out there because you're a part of the Black Student Athlete Affinity Group at St. Thomas, which I think you were part of launching. Like, I think it's a new initiative at the school, which is really awesome. Yeah. But what was that experience like, getting to be in community just with so many folks at that scale out in LA?
Yeah, I mean, it was like some of the experiences I had out there were like insane. Like, just being able to, already like seeing all these amazing like Black student athletes doing all these awesome things at their schools, and hearing what they were doing with their clubs and that kind of stuff was amazing. But also another thing that they were super big on at the summit was networking and being able to meet other athletes who were kind of going through the same like academic things that you are. So, I got to meet, because I'm pre-med, so I got to meet a bunch of other like pre-med Black student athletes and get to hear their journeys and their experiences at their schools. And it's a super impactful like thing to be able to be with these people and feel like you're not the only one going through these things. And there was just so much, I got to learn from so many different players doing all this kind of stuff at their schools. And just being able to see other Black professionals as well, who were, they were out there giving like internships to kids, and they were and giving like advice to people, and just being like the first step is like just emailing or texting. Like, I'm not on, a lot of people were like, I wouldn't be on this stage unless like someone had told me the things that I'm telling you. And just being able to sit there and be like, I cannot believe I get to be here and be with all these students and hear about it. And I don't know, just like being around so many of those student athletes was just like life-changing and just very super empowering. And I'm excited to hopefully go back next year and get to see everyone all over again. And just, I don't know, just getting to network and meet with everyone has been so cool. We all got like 100 Instagram followers after. We were like, we're all gonna be best friends, and we're all best friends. It's so fun.
I love that. See, we do have the metrics. You got 100 Instagram followers. We got the numbers, the hard data. And I think it's so cool to see events like that. It was even cool for me to see, the posts about the Black Student Athlete Affinity Group at St. Thomas. I think I'm going to blow people's minds here. Women's college soccer and club soccer across the country, but especially in Minnesota, can be a pretty damn white space. Like, it is
Mhm.
not representative of the communities we live in. It's not representative of the country. Like, even people talk about the national team pool, the pro level pool, and part of the way to change that is just by helping folks build those relationships, like giving folks a
Mhm.
platform, like supporting Black athletes, amplifying Black athletes, like helping them make those connections. So it's super, super rad that you've been able to experience that. I mean, I'm curious, and out in LA, I mean, if people didn't see, the scale of people out there was just like nuts. I mean, I listed the
Yeah.
soccer specific people, but like you mentioned, meeting like random national champs from like University of Georgia. I mean, like
Mhm.
very famous like entrepreneurs and stuff were out there like crushing it.
Yeah.
Like Rich Paul and like all these like insanely globally significant folks. So I'm sure, was it like, who were some of the craziest people you interacted with or even got to like fangirl for a minute out there?
Oh my gosh, yes. I saw Sydney McLaughlin was there, and my dad is super into track and got me super into track during high school. So, I mean, I was just walking through the hotel lobby and then I look and she's standing like right there. I was like, and I couldn't take a picture because I was like, that'd be so weird, like to like ask her for a picture with all these people. But I mean, seeing her, I was like, okay, like this is a big deal because I was like within the first hour of me being there. So I was like, okay, this is pretty crazy. I met some University of Georgia football players who'd like just won a championship. So like, and they all had their rings, and I was like, oh my gosh, like this dude is like insane. And just I don't know, like I mean, you were meeting national champs, but you were also meeting people from like small schools in like Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just crazy being able to have that space and be like, okay, like we're gonna talk about issues going on and like where and you can connect whether you're going to Penn State or whether you're going to middle of nowhere like Kentucky.
Right,
Like everyone can still connect on this platform. So that was I don't
right.
know, that was just like super cool. Also seeing Rich Paul, I was like, this dude knows Adele. Like he's my connection. I'm gonna meet that one day. But I didn't talk to him, so I need to DM him or something. I'll be like, I saw
we
you.
can we can you're at least like you're at maximum 3 degrees away. Someone there that you
Oh
talk
yeah,
to could get you a some we could get you connected with Rich Paul. We could get you out
yes.
like hanging out at Knicks games with Adele. We could make it work. We could
Okay.
make it work.
Okay, yeah,
I
yeah. We'll
do.
we'll talk about it. Yeah.
We'll make it work. We'll make it work.
DM
As
you.
if I have some ability to communicate with Rich Paul.
Yeah.
But I am curious too, because we're talking about sort of that's the shiniest, largest, most impactful stage. But then even at the St. Thomas level, I believe it's like one of the assistant coaches, maybe, or one of the coaches, and then there's a cool video you all did talking about sort of the group and why it was
Mhm.
important. And it's you see like a dozen or so athletes hanging out, in that space as part of the group. I mean, what's the Black Student Athlete Affinity Group at St. Thomas? What has that space meant for you, as a Black athlete? To have sort of a group, and you spoke a little bit at the national event and stuff, but what does
Mhm.
that space mean for you all just at the St. Thomas campus?
I mean, for us, it really just gives us. I mean, St. Thomas is a PWI, as like a lot of people know. So it's like already you're kind of already the minority when you walk into a lot of
Mm-hmm.
rooms. So it's been super
Mm-hmm.
cool having this affinity group because we can spend an hour a month and be able to talk about like issues that are events that have happened in the past couple of weeks and be able to really have a
Right,
safe space and not feel like we have to explain like you have to explain what's going on or what it feels like for you. It's so cool
right.
to have this space and be like we're all Black athletes, like we
Mm-hmm.
understand what's going on, like we've gone through a lot of the same experiences and just having a safe space where you don't feel like you have to explain yourself in the way that you're
Yeah,
feeling. It's like,
yeah.
well, like this is how it is for a lot of us, and kind of like being able to transition back into these mostly white spaces and be like
Mm-hmm.
we have this group where we can like talk about what we need to so that we don't feel like we go into these spaces and feel like we don't like have the backup to be able to talk about things, because it's like we all understand like we're all here for you no matter what
Mm-hmm.
happens in any other spaces. Like having that support group has been like amazing and so awesome.
Yeah. Well, I think, and it's just such a good point because we really try and elevate all the time, like how many demands and how many pressures are on, the college athletes we cover in general. I mean, like D1 women's college soccer and all college soccer, all the levels we cover is like incredibly pressure filled. There's a lot of stress. There's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of things for you to balance logistically.
Mhm.
It is like just the trips and the classes and the tests, let alone the challenge of like, where do I fit in this team? What's my role? Like, what do the coaches need from me? Oh no, we want to be winning. We're not winning. Like all of the
Mhm.
pressures, let alone like the built-in structural challenges of trying to go through that as someone where, you know, you're the black athlete on a primarily white team. You're, you know, a black
Mhm.
student at a primarily white institution. Like the layers on top of that just add so much to it. And to
Yeah.
have a space where you can be like, listen, I was dealing with this with a teammate, like they didn't get it, like you all get it. Like having a space
Mhm.
where you can just have those moments of, hey, my coach was saying this, my teacher was saying this, whatever it is, it's so important. So it's huge props
Agreed.
to all the folks who made that group a reality at St. Thomas, because those spaces are something that every student needs, but especially, you know, black students at a place like St. Thomas, that's a huge resource, I'm sure.
Oh, for sure, for sure. And you can tell like having players come incoming players on any of the teams, like we also
Mm-hmm.
work to make sure they know that like even though this is
Right.
a PWI, like you have your own space.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like there's only 4 people in the room. Like a lot of the athletes come in and a lot of it means a
Mm-hmm.
lot to a lot of the athletes as
Right.
well. So it's like
Yeah.
it's nice for them to have that.
Like on a recruiting visit, you can literally go up to a black recruit and be like, listen, I know you're going to be meeting a lot of white folks on this visit, but like we also have spaces for
Yeah.
you. Like we have resources for you. Like this is the setup we have. Yeah, that's huge.
No,
You did
exactly.
mention you did mention to go in a very different direction. You mentioned your pre-med. Obviously, the soccer
Mhm.
website mentions, you know, a neuroscience major. You're on the dean's list. So I think Ches, you know, our overlapping conversation topics are starting to diverge. I don't know how much more we have to talk about now. But for real, jokes aside, you
Mhm.
clearly are a top shelf nerd. So props to you, by the way.
Thank you.
I'm a different kind of nerd, not an academically smart nerd, different kind of nerd. But tell us what you're interested in doing. You obviously mentioned pre med, but is there certain stuff, certain, you know, specific kind of genius shit you're into? You know, what's your specific vibe, Ches?
Yeah, so for me, I mean, I'm pre-med, so I'm neuroscience, so I mean, the brain is like it's always been something I've super been like really into, and just like I remember being in
Mm-hmm.
like 6th grade and doing like a whole project and bringing like a human like fake brain and being like, these are the parts of the brain, and all my classmates are like, oh my god, this girl's like insane, but like I'm super into that kind of stuff just because like it's like 3 pounds and it's like the coolest thing ever. Like it controls everything. It's like all this stuff. I've always been super into the brain, but besides for school, I'm also like I was always really into Harry Potter. Like definitely
Sure,
big Harry Potter nerd on that one. Like
sure.
at all times. I also just got into Game of Thrones and love that too. Super good, but it's
Okay,
always gonna be Harry Potter in my heart. I haven't really
okay.
gotten into Star Wars,
Mm,
but I like never watched it, and I tried watching the first movie, which is apparently like not good. But I watched it and
right.
I was like, yeah, that wasn't good. So it's Harry Potter for me, unfortunately. But maybe I'll open my world to the Star Wars fans. But
You,
no, I can't do it. I'm not there yet.
you do have the luxury of, you could start with like the notoriously great Star Wars stuff. So you
Yeah,
could, so
yeah.
now you're in this era where, for instance, you could start with the Mandalorian with Baby
Mhm.
Yoda and Grogu.
Yes.
You could start with Mandalorian, which is like universally raved about. You could start with like
Mhm.
Andor. These are series, like TV series on
Oh, okay.
Disney
I'm
Plus.
like, I know what the Mandalorian is. I don't know what this other stuff.
Oh, this is great! Wow, you're truly coming in scratch. This is great. Look at me describing Star Wars content. So Disney Plus, those are your endpoints. Start with either
Mhm.
Andor, which is just a good drama show. I don't know if you like dramas or not.
No,
And then
I
Mandalore
like anything.
and then Mandalorian. Those two shows are your entry points, because people
Okay.
say those are sort of the two best, better than any movie, like better than any. So those are your entry points for Star
Okay.
Wars.
Okay,
So
that's good to
don't
know.
worry, don't worry.
Okay, I'm
And
like
I
writing that down. I need to remember.
Well, wait, and I'm really curious. I'm actually going to jump to my road trip ask now, because you're talking about all this content. What is your road trip strategy? Because you all are on the road just like a ton, and in the Summit League, so many of these trips, I'm assuming, are bus trips. Like I'm assuming
Mhm.
you very rarely are flying, just because of the nature of the trips aren't insanely long, but they're a little long. But
Yeah.
also, you can't really afford to fly everywhere. So I'm assuming you all live on the bus. So for you, what's your road trip strategy? Are you burning content on the bus and then homework at the hotel? Are you like homework early on the bus so you can burn content later? Like what is your strategy on these road trips, Ches?
Yeah. So on road trips, unfortunately, I'm like kind of insane about school. So I will literally like sit on the bus and cause I like super romanticize homework. So I'll just like put in my AirPods and I like do my reading and stuff. And it's like, I like love it. It's like so much fun. But also, if you catch me in one of my like high energy moments, like me and like my roommates, Soph and Cam, like we'll probably talk for like 7 hours straight, like on the bus. Or I remember one bus trip, me and Soph were like making like shadow puppets on the like bus like roof, and literally everyone else was like dead silent. And we were like singing with our hands, and everyone was probably like, they're crazy. Like, what is up with them? So, we also like to like harass like our teammates every now and then, or our coaches, or Soph likes making TikToks on the bus. So we like to do those every now and then. But yeah, most of the time though, I'm probably just like doing my homework but Soap and Cam like to do it with me. So we'll all sit at like the table on the bus and we'll like do our homework and then distract each other and not do our homework for like 2 hours.
So I'm assuming, are we talking about Cameron Rintoul?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Cameron Rintoul, and then Soph, which Soph are we talking about?
Sophia Caballero.
Okay. Caballero and Rintoul. Okay, it's good to know. I just need to know the full sock puppet crew just before we walk off.
Yeah. Oh,
this is your fault, Ches. Now Cam and Soph are gonna have to answer post game questions about sock puppets. This is what happens.
Yes.
What happens.
Oh gosh.
So you mentioned well, actually, I mentioned a lot of these trips are shorter. This fall, you do have one sort of huge early season road trip where you get to go out to Portland. You're playing Portland State and Western Oregon, sort of a double Oregon swing. And so I'm assuming, that trip is going to be its whole thing, getting to go out to the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah.
But I'm really curious, even in these Summit League trips, because you've made probably all these different road trips at this point for the Summit League. Are there any sort of underrated spots to go to? I understand we're getting pretty hardcore, pretty like weird upper Midwest locations when we're talking about every Summit League school, but are there any sort of underrated trips where you all like, either because, there's super easy stuff to walk to, or cool spots you hit, or like cool coffee shops or restaurants or whatever? Is there any sort of random Summit League underrated, under the radar trip that you all like, or that you?
Yeah. One place that I really enjoyed was we were playing UMKC. So we went to Kansas City, and it was so cute there. Like, I told one of the goalies, I was like, guys, it looks like where they filmed Gossip Girl. Like, it looks like Brooklyn or something. Like, it was like adorable. But I really liked Kansas City for some reason. But I loved there. I loved Omaha whenever we went because we went to Ellie Tempero's house. And oh my God, it was so cute. And I got to see her dog, and I'm obsessed with her dog. So Omaha was super fun too. And yeah, I love the Omaha trip too, because we got to go to Denver and we got to come to my house and everyone got to see my house. So that was super fun too. And yeah, that Omaha Denver trip was always super fun. But Kansas City, underrated. I'm telling y'all, like I love that city. It was so fun.
Kansas City is a lot of people say it's similar to the Twin Cities, where it's sort of like the two sides of the river and whatever, and similar size. I will say I have never heard anyone say that Kansas City reminds them of Gossip Girl. So that is like blowing my mind. The Kansas City Chamber of Commerce should cut that clip and they should share it everywhere in the world. Like hip young college student refers to Kansas City as similar to Gossip Girl, similar to Brooklyn. Like, they are going to put you in an ad for Kansas City, Jess.
Yes, I'll be an influencer for Kansas City. Their number one influencer. I loved it there. I don't even care. I literally thought it was Brooklyn. I was like,
I did.
I'm obsessed.
I did too. Kansas City is on the short list of possible road trips I'll go cover when you all go down there, because it's like, it's a doable trip. It's a cool spot. Omaha is really cool. Like you said, you got to go to Denver, which is I think there's the two sort of quirky members in the Summit League that make like slightly less sense than everyone else is obviously Oral Roberts way down south, and then Denver is just a little bit outside the Midwest.
Yeah.
And so you being from Colorado, I doubt you had like a ton of awareness of like the Summit League in general, but you knew of Denver just because they're, a pretty good soccer program and a pretty good athletics program. But for you coming in, have any of the other Summit League schools, you mentioned being aware of Denver, obviously, but any of the other Summit League schools, have any of them started to be sort of early rivals for you all? Are there early vibes of like, oh damn, we gotta beat blank? Like, because it's you're into season 3, you've had rematches now. So what are those early rivalries we're hearing about where you guys are like, man, screw these guys?
Yeah. I mean, all love to every team. I love all of you guys equally, but I feel like there's a little bit of a thing going with NDSU for sure, just because a lot of people from Minnesota go there, and like a lot of like everyone knows people on NDSU, and even I know people from Colorado who are committed there. And I don't know, it's like that's always a super fun game to play, and it's been like, kind of back and forth. So I can kind of see something going there a little bit for sure. That's probably the first one that comes to mind, just because that game, I don't know, it's always so fun. And DU is always super fun too. But yeah, NDSU, I don't know, those girlies, it's always a movie when we play them. I do love them though. They're all so sweet. I love all of them.
I love how even your like gentle mention of a possible rivalry was sandwiched with like 2 very bright compliments on either side of the sandwich. I love it. But it is nuts. I mean, the Summit League, there's a reason why we, Equal Time covers it a decent amount, really has an awareness of it, because it's drunk with Minnesotans. I mean, there's so many Minnesotans on all the Dakota schools. St. Thomas obviously has a huge chunk of Minnesotans on the squad. And so it is something where you see like players just have played together forever, even like random overlaps of like Colorado kids going there and you going to St. Thomas. So it is kind of funny that how there's like a lot of relationships and a lot of like webs of connections that go on there for sure. And so you all in your first year of D1 and your first year with the program were 4-12-1, but honestly, there were plenty of games where you were competitive and maybe dropped it. Like I watched a decent amount of those games. Last year, you were 6-8-3, so a nice step up.
Been up.
Are we climbing up to a winning record this year? Is that what we're doing, Ches? Are we?
Yes.
Is that where St. Thomas is going? Where's the team going this fall?
Yeah, I definitely can see that growth is going to keep coming, especially, I mean, my entire class, like all 12, 13, 24, there's so many of us, like we're all going to be like upperclassmen now. So it's just really everyone being able to take a role too. I think that's also going to bring a really good dynamic to our play. And I don't know, I can see it in the distance. I can see that winning record like coming. And I just think it's going to keep going up from there. We're going to keep like finishing on some of these chances from the past games that maybe we like dropped it at the last minute. We can see that like these changes are going to be made, and it's just going to get better and better and just more and more fun with everyone. I'm excited. Yeah, definitely. It's going up. It's going up.
Arianna Sanchez, Ches from the University of St. Thomas, pure blind positivity, ray of sunshine coming to us from Colorado. She'll be heading back to Minnesota for the start of training camp for the 3rd season in her career, the 3rd season in the University of St. Thomas's D1 campaign. Thanks so much for joining, Ches. This has been great.
Of course. Thank you so much. I had so much fun. I felt like a celebrity when I got the message. I was like, oh my gosh, they're going to have me. No, thank you so much. It was awesome.
I love it.